Jake woke up the next morning with a heavy feeling in his chest. The conversation with Queen Zarathiel in the garden had changed everything. What had started as a simple trade mission was now something much more dangerous and complex. He couldn't stop thinking about the loneliness in her voice when she talked about ruling her people. During breakfast with his team, Jake shared what he had learned. Ambassador Hayes looked troubled, while Dr. Rodriguez took notes on her tablet. Lieutenant, Commander Torres simply shook his head. "This is bad," Hayes said. "If we're seen as supporting the Queen against her own military, it could be viewed as interference in their internal affairs. But if we back away now, we might be abandoning someone who genuinely wants peace between our species." "What about our orders?" Torres asked. "We're supposed to negotiate trade agreements, not get involved in alien politics." Jake stared out the window at the palace courtyard, where Velthari guards were conducting their morning drills. "I don't think we have a choice anymore. Our presence here has already made us part of their politics. General Kexfer sees us as a threat to their warrior culture. If he takes power, any chance of peace between humans and Velthari dies with him." Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her tablet. "Jake's right. I've been studying their history, and every time the Velthari have faced internal conflict, they've united their people by finding an external enemy to fight. If Kexfer takes control, he'll likely use humanity as that enemy." The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. "You're saying that if we don't help the Queen, we might be looking at a war between our species?" "It's possible," Rodriguez said grimly. "The Velthari have a much larger fleet than we do. If they decide humans are a threat that needs to be eliminated, Earth's colonies will be defenseless." Ambassador Hayes stood up and paced to the window. "We need to contact Earth Command immediately. This is way beyond what we were authorized to handle." "There's no time," Jake said. "It would take days to get a response, and I don't think the Queen has days. Did you see how Kexver looked at her yesterday? He's not planning to wait much longer." As if summoned by their conversation, a Velthari servant appeared at their door. "Commander Sullivan, Her Majesty requests your presence in her private office immediately." Jake followed the servant through corridors he hadn't seen before, deeper into the palace than he had been allowed to go. The decorations here were older and more personal, with paintings that seemed to show the royal family in informal settings. He noticed that many of the images showed Queen Zarathiel as a child with her father, and he could see the love between them in their expressions. The Queen's office was surprisingly modest, with simple furniture and shelves lined with books and data tablets. Queen Zarathiel sat behind a desk covered with reports and star charts. She looked like she hadn't slept much. "Commander, thank you for coming," she said, gesturing for him to sit. "I have received disturbing news this morning. 2 more systems have declared independence, and General Kexver has called for an emergency session of the Military Council." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "What does that mean?" "It means he is preparing to challenge my authority directly. In our culture, if enough military leaders lose confidence in their ruler, they can demand a trial of leadership. If I lose, I will be stripped of my crown and exiled. Kexver would become the new ruler. And if you win?" The Queen's smile was bitter. "The trial involves single combat, Commander. I am skilled with weapons, but Kexver is a veteran of dozens of battles. I would not survive." Jake leaned forward in his chair. "There has to be another way. What about the noble houses? Don't they have a say in who rules? Some do support me, but they are afraid. Kexver has promised them that he will restore the Empire's strength by conquering new worlds. To many nobles, that sounds better than my plans for peace and cooperation. What about the people, the regular citizens?" Queen Zarathiel looked surprised by the question. "The people? They follow whoever shows strength. My father understood this. He gave them victories and conquests, and they loved him for it. I have given them only promises of a better future." Jake thought about his own experience leading soldiers. "Your Majesty, in my experience, people don't just follow strength. They follow leaders who they believe care about them. Have you tried talking to your people directly? That is not how things are done, she said automatically, then paused. Though I suppose, if I am going to lose everything anyway, perhaps it is time to try new approaches. Before Jake could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. The queen jumped to her feet, her hand moving instinctively to the weapon at her side. Through the office windows, Jake could see Velthari soldiers running through the courtyards. What's happening? He asked. Queen Zarathiel activated a communication device on her desk. Report, she commanded. Your Majesty, came a voice crackling with static. We have reports of fighting in the capital city. Several military units have seized government buildings. General Kexver has declared that you are unfit to rule and has demanded your immediate surrender. The Queen's face went pale. How many units have joined him? Approximately half of the capital garrison, Your Majesty. The rest remain loyal, but they are outnumbered. Jake felt the world spinning around him. He's actually doing it. He's starting a coup. Queen Zarathiel turned off the communication device and looked at Jake with eyes that held both fear and determination. Commander, I need to ask something of you that goes far beyond your diplomatic mission. I need your help. What can I do? I'm just one human. You are more than that, she said firmly. You have shown me that there are different ways to be strong. Your people survive and thrive not because you were the most powerful, but because you learned to work together. Maybe you can help me find a way to save my people from destroying themselves. Jake thought about his orders, about the carefully planned diplomatic mission that was now falling apart around them. Ambassador Hayes will be furious. Earth Command would probably court-martial him. But looking at the alien queen who was trying to save her empire from tearing itself apart, he knew he couldn't walk away. What do you need me to do? Relief flooded the queen's features. I need you to help me reach the people directly. If I can show them that strength doesn't have to mean conquest, that we can be powerful without being destroyers, maybe they will. Choose a different path. How? There is a communication array in the palace that can broadcast to every world in the Empire. If I can reach it before Kexver's forces take control, I can speak directly to my people. But getting there will be dangerous. Jake stood up, feeling the familiar weight of command settling on his shoulders. Your Majesty, I've been in dangerous situations before. What matters is having a plan. Queen Zarathiel moved to a wall panel and pressed her hand against it. The panel slid away to reveal a hidden passage. This tunnel leads to the communication center. My ancestors built these passages for times of crisis. But Kexver knows about them too, so we won't have much time. What about my team? They will be safer in the guest quarters. Kexver wants me, not them. But if you come with me, you will be in great danger. I cannot guarantee your safety. Jake thought about Captain Morgan and the Marine crew waiting in orbit. He thought about Earth and the colonies that might face destruction if this crisis wasn't resolved. But mostly, he thought about the alien queen who was willing to risk everything to save her people from a war that would destroy them all. Your Majesty, I didn't come here to be safe. I came here to build a bridge between our peoples. If helping you is what it takes to protect both humans and Velthari, then that's what I'll do. Queen Zarathiel smiled, and for the first time since he had met her, Jake saw genuine hope in her eyes. Then let us go, Commander. Let us see if we can save an empire. As they entered the hidden passage, Jake realized that he was no longer just a diplomat or a soldier. He was a human being who had chosen to stand beside an alien friend in her darkest hour. Whatever happened next, he would face it with the knowledge that sometimes the most important battles were fought not with weapons, but with the courage to believe in a better future. The passage stretched ahead of them, dark and uncertain, but they moved forward together. Behind them, the sounds of fighting grew louder as the Velthari Empire began to tear itself apart. Ahead lay either salvation or destruction, and Jake knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of billions of lives across the galaxy got in the darkness of the tunnel, walking beside an alien queen who had trusted him with her life and her empire. Jake understood that this was what it truly meant to be human. Not the ability to conquer or destroy, but the willingness to stand up for what was right, even when the odds seemed impossible. The real test was just beginning. The negotiations had been going on for 3 days, and Jake could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. Every meeting took place in the same formal chamber, with Queen Zarathiel sitting on her throne while various ministers and advisors stood nearby. The talks moved slowly, with each side carefully measuring their words. On the surface, everything seemed normal. The Velthari delegation discussed trade routes, technology exchanges, and mutual defense agreements. But Jake noticed things that bothered him. The Queen's advisors often whispered among themselves when she spoke. Some of them watched her with expressions that seemed more critical than respectful. "Something's wrong here," Jake told his team during their evening briefing in the guest quarters. "The Queen keeps looking over her shoulder. And did you see how General Kexver reacted when she mentioned long-term cooperation with humans?" Dr. Rodriguez nodded. "I've been watching the body language. In Velthari culture, subordinates should keep their eyes down when their superior is speaking. But I've seen several advisors staring directly at the Queen. That's either very rude or very threatening." Ambassador Hayes frowned. "We need to be careful not to get involved in their internal politics. Our mission is to establish trade relations, not to solve their domestic problems." But Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something dangerous was building. During that day's session, he had caught General Kexver studying the human delegation with cold, calculating eyes. The general was a large Velthari with scars across his face and arms, clearly a veteran warrior. His tattoos marked him as a member of the military caste, and Jake had noticed that many of the palace guards looked to him rather than the Queen for guidance. The next morning brought a change in routine. Instead of the formal throne room, Queen Zarathiel invited the human delegation to join her for a meal in her private dining hall. The room was smaller and more comfortable, with windows that looked out over the palace gardens. "I thought you might enjoy seeing more of our culture," the Queen explained, as servants brought dishes of alien food. "These are traditional foods from my home province." Jake tried the strange fruits and vegetables, finding most of them surprisingly pleasant. The Queen seemed more relaxed in this setting, asking questions about Earth and human customs. For the first time, their conversation felt natural rather than formal. "Tell me about your military service, Commander," she said. "I understand you served in combat before becoming a diplomat." "Yes, Your Majesty. I spent 8 years in the Earth Defense Force, mostly fighting pirates and smugglers in the outer systems. It taught me that sometimes the best way to avoid a fight is to be ready for one." The Queen's expression grew thoughtful. Wise words. "My father believed that strength was the only language that mattered in the galaxy. He conquered 3 star systems during his reign and never lost a battle. But I sometimes wonder if there might be other ways to show strength." Before Jake could respond, the dining hall doors burst open. General Kexver strode in with several on guards, his face dark with anger. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice barely controlled, "I must speak with you immediately. There are urgent matters that require your attention." Queen Zarathiel's relaxed demeanor vanished instantly. She became the cold, formal ruler again. "General, you forget yourself. We have guests." "Yes," Kexver said, his eyes fixed on Jake. "That is exactly the problem." The tension in the room was so thick Jake could almost taste it. The Queen's jaw tightened, and her hands gripped the arms of her chair. "You will explain yourself, General, now." Kexver glanced at the human delegation, then back at the Queen. "Perhaps it would be better to discuss this in private, Your Majesty." "No," Queen Zarathiel said firmly. "Our guests are here under diplomatic protection. Speak freely or leave." The general's scarred face twisted with frustration. "Very well. 3 more systems have declared independence from the Empire. The nobles of House Veltan have refused to send their annual tribute. And now I learned that you are planning to sign agreements that would make us dependent on alien technology. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. 3 systems had declared independence. The intelligence reports had mentioned some unrest, but nothing like this. The Velthari Empire was falling apart, and somehow the human delegation had walked into the middle of it. The Empire has weathered such challenges before, the Queen said calmly, but Jake could see the worry in her eyes. We will deal with the rebels as we always have. With what forces? Kexver demanded. Half our fleet is scattered across the galaxy, trying to maintain order. The other half is needed to protect the core worlds. We cannot afford to appear weak by allying ourselves with primitives. The insult to humanity was clear, and Jake felt his temper flare. But before he could speak, Queen Zarathiel rose from her seat, her presence suddenly commanding and dangerous. You forget yourself, General, she said, her voice like ice. These are our guests, and you will treat them with respect. As for weakness, I would say that a general who cannot control his tongue in front of all eyes shows far more weakness than a queen who seeks to build bridges instead of burning them. For a moment, Jake thought Kexver might actually attack the Queen. The general's hand moved toward his weapon, and several of his guards tensed. But after a long, tense moment, he stepped back. As you wish, Your Majesty, he said through gritted teeth. But remember that your father's strength built this. Empire, do not let alien influences destroy what he died to create. With that, he turned and stalked out of the room, his guards following. The Queen remained standing for several moments, her body rigid with controlled anger. When she finally sat down, Jake could see that her hands were shaking slightly. I apologize for that display, she said quietly. General Kexver is concerned about the Empire's security. Sometimes his concerns overcome his manners. Ambassador Hayes cleared his throat. Your Majesty, perhaps we should postpone our negotiations until your internal matters are resolved. We would not want to cause additional difficulties. No, the Queen said quickly, then caught herself and spoke more calmly. No, that will not be necessary. The General's concerns are noted, but I am still the ruler of this empire. Our agreements will proceed as planned. But Jake could see that the situation was more serious than she was admitting. The way Kexver had spoken wasn't just disrespectful, it was almost treasonous. And the fact that he had brought armed guards into the Queen's private dining hall suggested that he felt confident enough to challenge her authority directly. That evening, Jake found himself walking through the palace gardens, trying to process what he had witnessed. The alien plants glowed softly in the moonlight, creating an otherworldly beauty that would have been peaceful under normal circumstances. But his mind was racing with implications and possibilities. He was surprised to find Queen Zarathiel sitting alone on a bench near a fountain, still wearing her formal robes but without her crown. She looked younger without the weight of the royal regalia, and more vulnerable. Commander, she said as he approached. I did not expect to find anyone else here at this hour. I couldn't sleep, Jake admitted. Your Majesty, I hope you don't mind me asking, but is your empire really as stable as you indicated during our meetings? The Queen was quiet for a long moment, staring at the fountain. Tell me, Commander, what do you know about the burden of leadership? Jake considered the question. I've led soldiers into battle. I know what it feels like to have other people's lives depend on your decisions. But I can't imagine what it's like to be responsible for entire worlds. My father ruled through fear, she said softly. When a system rebelled, he crushed it completely. When a noble house questioned his authority, he destroyed them. It was effective, but it left deep wounds. When I took the throne, I hoped to heal those wounds to show that strength could be combined with wisdom. And now? Now, I discover that many of my people see compassion as weakness. They believe that any attempt at diplomacy is a betrayal of our warrior traditions. General Kexfer speaks for many when he says that we should conquer our neighbors rather than negotiate with them. Jake moved closer, sitting on the bench beside her. Your Majesty, if you don't mind me saying so, it sounds like you're fighting a war on multiple fronts. The rebels in the outer systems, the nobles who refuse to pay tribute, and now opposition from your own military leadership. The Queen looked at him with surprise. You see clearly, Commander. Yes, that is exactly what I am facing. And in the middle of all this, I am trying to build a relationship with humanity that could benefit both our peoples. But every step I take toward peace is seen as a step away from strength. What about your supporters? Surely not everyone in your government agrees with General Kexfer. Some do support me, she admitted. But they are afraid. Kexfer has the loyalty of many military units, and in our culture, military strength often determines political power. If I appear weak, even my allies might abandon me. Jake felt a chill as he realized the full implications. Your Majesty, are you saying that General Kexfer might attempt a coup? Queen Zarathiel's silence was answer enough. In the soft glow of the alien garden, Jake could see the weight of an empire crushing down on the shoulders of a ruler who was trying to do the right thing in an impossible. Commander Jake Sullivan stood at the observation deck of the starship Meridian, watching the alien planet grow larger in the viewport. The world below was nothing like Earth. Purple clouds swirled around massive silver cities that stretched across red deserts. Strange towers reached toward the sky like metal fingers, and Jake could see ships moving between them like tiny insects. First time seeing a Velthari world? Captain Lisa Morgan asked as she joined him at the window. First time seeing any alien world, Jake replied, adjusting his formal diplomatic uniform. The blue fabric felt strange after years of wearing military gear. 3 months ago I was fighting pirates in the Outer Rim. Now I'm supposed to negotiate with an alien empire. Lisa smiled. You were chosen for a reason. The Velthari respect strength, and you have plenty of that. But they also need to see that humans can be trusted. Your record shows both courage and good judgment. Jake nodded, though he felt far from confident. The Velthari Empire controlled 12 star systems and commanded the most advanced military fleet in this sector of the galaxy. Humanity had only recently developed faster-than-light travel, and their small fleet of ships was nothing compared to the massive Velthari warships that now surrounded the Meridian. Remember, Lisa continued, this isn't just about trade agreements. The Velthari have been watching us for years. They're deciding whether humans are potential allies or future threats. What you do down there could determine the fate of both our species. The weight of responsibility settled on Jake's shoulders like a heavy cloak. He had led men into battle before, but this felt different. In combat, the rules were clear. Kill or be killed. Protect your soldiers. Complete the mission. Diplomacy was full of hidden meanings and careful words that could start wars or prevent them. Dr. Elena Rodriguez approached with a tablet in her hands. She was the team's expert on Velthari culture and biology. Jake, we need to review the protocols one more time. The Velthari take ceremony very seriously. Any mistake could be seen as an insult. Jake listened as Elena explained the complex greeting rituals, the proper way to address Queen Zarathiel, and the significance of various gestures. The Velthari were humanoid but taller than humans, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They had no hair, instead displaying intricate tattoos that showed their rank and achievements. The queen is considered almost divine by her people, Elena explained. She has absolute power, but that also means she carries absolute responsibility. If something goes wrong in the Empire, her people will blame her personally. What do we know about her? Jake asked. She's young for a Velthari ruler, maybe equivalent to 30 in human years. She took power when her father died in a hunting accident 2 years ago. Since then, there have been reports of unrest in some of the outer systems. Nothing confirmed, but our intelligence suggests all is not well in the Empire. Jake studied. The information on the tablet. Queen Zerathil's official portrait showed a striking figure with the typical Velthari features, but something in her eyes seemed different from the other royal images he had seen. While her father and grandfather looked stern and commanding, her expression held a hint of uncertainty. "Approaching the capital city," announced the ship's pilot over the intercom. "Prepare for landing." Jake gathered his small team. Besides, Elena, he had brought Lieutenant Commander Rick Torres, a security expert, and Ambassador Richard Hayes, a veteran diplomat who would advise but let Jake take the lead. The decision to send a military officer as the primary negotiator had been controversial, but Admiral Brooks had insisted that the Velthari would respect strength more than smooth words. The shuttle descended through the purple clouds, revealing the alien city in all its strange beauty. The buildings were made of a silver metal that seemed to shimmer in the light of the system's twin suns. Massive sculptures of past rulers stood throughout the city, their eyes seeming to follow the human shuttle as it approached the royal palace. The palace itself was enormous, a complex of towers and domes that covered several city blocks. Gardens filled with strange plants surrounded the main buildings, and Jake could see hundreds of Velthari moving through the corridors and courtyards. Many stopped to watch the human shuttle land on the designated platform. "Remember, Ambassador," Hayes said as they prepared to exit the shuttle, "let them make the first move. Show respect but not weakness. The Velthari admire confidence." The shuttle doors opened, and Jake stepped onto alien soil for the first time. The air smelled different, with a metallic tang that reminded him of ozone after a lightning storm. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth's, making each step feel bouncy and strange. A delegation of Velthari officials waited to greet them. They were tall and elegant, wearing flowing robes decorated with complex patterns. Their pale blue skin seemed to glow in the alien sunlight, and their large dark eyes watched the humans with obvious curiosity. The lead official stepped forward and spoke in accented but clear English. "I am Minister Talvek, advisor to Her Majesty Queen Zerathil. Welcome to Nephara, honored visitors from Earth." Jake executed the formal greeting Elena had taught him, placing his right hand over his heart and bowing slightly. "I am Commander Jake Sullivan, representing the United Earth Government. We are honored by your invitation and grateful for your hospitality." Minister Talvek seemed pleased by Jake's proper use of the greeting. "Her Majesty awaits you in the throne room. Please, follow me." They walked through corridors filled with artwork and sculptures that told the history of the Velthari Empire. Jake noticed that many of the images showed battles and conquests, with Velthari warriors standing victorious over defeated enemies. The message was clear. This was a civilization built on strength and military success. But as they moved deeper into the palace, Jake began to notice things that didn't match the Empire's powerful image. Some of the decorations were faded or damaged. Guards stood at attention, but their equipment looked worn. There were fewer servants than he would have expected in such a massive palace. The throne room was impressive, with a high ceiling supported by massive columns. Banners hung from the walls, displaying the symbols of the various noble houses that served the Empire. At the far end of the room, on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single piece of black stone, sat Queen Zara, steel dot. She was more imposing in person than in her official portraits. Tall and regal, she wore a crown that seemed to be made of some kind of crystal that caught the light and scattered it in rainbow patterns. Her robes were deep purple, the color of royalty, and her tattoos marked her as a member of the royal bloodline. But it was her eyes that caught Jake's attention. They were intelligent and alert, but he could see something else there. Tiredness, perhaps, or worry. She looked like someone carrying a heavy burden. "Approach," she commanded, her voice carrying clearly across the large room. Jake and his team walked forward, stopping at the prescribed distance from the throne. He performed the formal greeting again, this time adding the special phrases reserved for addressing royalty. "Rise, Commander Sullivan," Queen Zerathil said. "We welcome you and your companions to our realm. It has been many years since beings." from another world have stood in this chamber. Her English was perfect, with only a slight accent that made her words sound musical. Jake had been told that the Velthari royal family studied human languages as part of their education, but he was impressed by her fluency. "Your Majesty," Jake began, "we come seeking friendship between our peoples. Humanity offers trade, knowledge, and cooperation. We believe that together, our species can accomplish more than either could alone." The Queen's expression didn't change, but Jake thought he saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Interest, perhaps, or hope. But when she spoke, her voice remained. Formal and controlled, bold words commander. "But friendship is built on trust, and trust must be earned. We shall see if your actions match your promises." As Jake looked into the alien queen's eyes, he realized that this mission would be far more complicated than anyone had imagined. There were currents running beneath the surface of this conversation, dangers and opportunities that the briefings hadn't prepared him for. The fate of two civilizations might depend on his ability to navigate these treacherous waters. The real negotiations were about to begin. Veltar paused in his story and looked out at the stars through the observation window. Jake could see that the alien was remembering something important, something that had changed everything. The human medical center was unlike anything I had ever seen, Veltar said slowly. "On my world, wounded warriors are either healed quickly or left to die. There's no middle ground. But your people treated me like I was one of their own." Jake remembered visiting Veltar in the medical bay. The alien had been connected to machines that monitored his heartbeat and breathing. His wounds had been cleaned and bandaged with care. The human doctors had worked for hours to save his life. Dr. Patricia Webb was in charge of my treatment, Veltar said. She was an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She spoke to me like I was a person, not a prisoner. Jake nodded. He remembered Dr. Webb. She had been the base's chief medical officer for over 10 years. She treated everyone the same, whether they were human soldiers or alien prisoners. The doctor explained everything she was doing, Veltar continued. She told me about the medicine she was giving me. She asked if I was in pain. She even brought me books about human culture to read while I recovered. "You learned to speak our language better during those weeks," Jake said. "Yes," Veltar smiled. "Dr. Webb spent hours teaching me. She said that if I was going to be there for a while, I should be able to communicate properly. She was very patient with my mistakes." Jake remembered how quickly Veltar had learned. Within 2 weeks, the alien could hold simple conversations. Within a month, he was speaking human language almost perfectly. But it was not just the language lessons, Veltar said. It was everything else. The way your people treated me. The way they showed me what human society was really like. "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Veltar turned away from the window to face Jake directly. "Your people could have interrogated me. They could have demanded military secrets. They could have used me as a bargaining chip with my government. Instead, they simply cared for me." Jake remembered the orders from headquarters. Command had wanted to question Veltar about Catherian military plans. But Dr. Webb had refused to allow it until her patient was fully recovered. "The guards who watched me were curious about my culture," Veltar said. "They asked me about my homeworld, my family, my beliefs. Not for intelligence purposes, but because they genuinely wanted to understand." "Private Tom Kelly spent a lot of time talking with you," Jake said. "I remember him bringing you human food to try," Veltar laughed. "Tom was fascinated by the differences between our species. He brought me chocolate and coffee and pizza. He wanted to know what I thought of human food. Most of it was too sweet for my taste, but I appreciate his kindness." Jake could picture young Tom Kelly sitting beside Veltar's bed, sharing stories and comparing their two worlds. Tom had been barely 19 years old, full of curiosity about everything. "Then there was the day you brought me something special," Veltar said, looking directly at Jake. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. He had almost forgotten about that day. "The communication device," he said quietly. "Yes," Veltar nodded. 3 weeks after the rescue, you came to my medical bed with a portable radio. You said I could use it to contact my people and tell them I was alive. Jake remembered that decision clearly. Veltar had been getting stronger, but he had also been getting sad. The alien missed his family and worried that they thought he was dead. I could not believe what you were offering. Veltar said, you were giving me a way to call for rescue. You were essentially offering to give up your prisoner. It seemed like the right thing to do, Jake said. Your family deserved to know you were alive. But I could have called for an attack on your base, Veltar pointed out. I could have given my people the exact location of your defenses. I could have betrayed your trust completely. Jake had thought about that risk. But looking at Veltar, seeing the alien's gratitude and growing friendship with the human staff, Jake had decided to trust him. You did not betray us, Jake said. You called your family and told them you were safe. You told them you were being treated well. Nothing more. That phone call changed everything, Veltar said. Not just for me, but for both our peoples. Jake looked confused. How? Veltar's eyes grew distant again. When I spoke to my commander, I told him about how humans had rescued me. I told him about the medical care, the kindness, the respect. He did not believe me at first. What did he say? He said I was suffering from head injuries, Veltar said with a bitter laugh. He said humans were incapable of such behavior. He ordered me to gather intelligence about your military capabilities. Jake felt a chill. Did you? I tried, Veltar said honestly. For about a day, but then I realized something important. I realized that I did not want to betray the people who had saved my life. Jake was quiet, waiting for Veltar to continue. Instead of gathering intelligence, I started asking questions about human philosophy, Veltar said. I asked Dr. Webb why humans help their enemies. I asked Tom Kelly about human concepts of honor and mercy. I asked you about why you made the choices you made. What did we tell you? You told me that all intelligent life has value, Veltar said. You told me that showing mercy to an enemy shows strength, not weakness. You told me that hatred only creates more hatred, but kindness can create friendship. Jake remembered those conversations. He had been surprised by how deep Veltar's questions were. The alien had not been interested in military secrets. He had wanted to understand the human heart. I spent 6 weeks in your medical center, Veltar continued. 6 weeks learning about human nature. By the time my people came to retrieve me, I was a completely different person. How were you different? Veltar thought for a moment. Before the crash, I believed that strength meant defeating your enemies. After meeting you and your people, I learned that real strength means turning enemies into friends. Jake could see the emotion in Veltar's eyes. What happened when you went back? To your people? At first, they did not trust me, Veltar said. They thought the humans had somehow corrupted my mind. They put me through weeks of psychological testing to make sure I was still loyal to the Empire. Were you still loyal? I was loyal to the best parts of the Empire, Veltar said. But I was no longer willing to fight a war based on hatred and misunderstanding. Jake leaned forward. What did you do? I requested a transfer to the diplomatic corps, Veltar said. I told my superiors that I wanted to study human culture and find ways to avoid future conflicts. They agreed? Eventually, Veltar nodded. But only because I had valuable intelligence about human military capabilities. They thought I could be useful in negotiations. Jake realized what Veltar was saying. You used their trust to become a peace negotiator. Exactly, Veltar said. Over the next 15 years, I slowly worked my way up through the diplomatic ranks. Every chance I got, I argued for peaceful contact with humanity. Every report I wrote emphasized human potential for friendship, rather than their threat as enemies. That must have been difficult, Jake said. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, Veltar admitted. Many of my people called me a traitor. They said I had been brainwashed by human propaganda. But I knew the truth. I had seen human kindness with my own eyes. Veltar looked directly at Jake. When the opportunity came to lead these peace talks, I volunteered immediately. I told the Emperor that I was the only Catherian who truly understood humans, and he believed you? He believed my results, Veltar said. Over the years, every prediction I made about human behavior turned out to be correct. When I said humans would honor their agreements, they did. When I said humans would show restraint in battle, they did. When I said humans were capable of mercy, they proved it again and again. Jake felt overwhelmed by what he was hearing. You mean all of this? All these peace talks, they happened because of what we did that day. Not just what you did, Veltar said, but how you did it. The way you treated me, the way your people showed me respect and kindness, the way you proved that enemies could become friends. All of that gave me the knowledge and the hope I needed to work for peace. Veltar reached out and placed one of his large, scaled hands on Jake's shoulder. You saved my life 15 years ago, Commander Morrison. But more than that, you showed me a better way to live. You planted the seeds of peace between our peoples. Jake felt tears forming in his eyes. I had no idea. How could you? Veltar said gently, you were just a young sergeant doing what you thought was right. You could not have known that your choice would echo across the years and bring us to this moment. Jake looked out at the stars, trying to process everything he had learned. So what happens now? Veltar smiled, showing his sharp teeth in what Jake now knew was a gesture of friendship. Now we build the peace that you made possible. Now we show both our peoples that the choice you made in that desert was the right one. Now we prove that friendship is stronger than fear. Veltar's voice became quieter as he continued his story. Jake could see the memories playing behind the alien's yellow eyes like old movies. When we left the cave, the sun was beginning to set, Veltar said. The sky was turning red and orange. On my world, we say that red skies bring either great fortune or great danger. That day, it brought both. Jake remembered stepping out of the cave with his team. The desert air had been cooling, but sweat still ran down his back. Danny Walsh had lifted one end of the stretcher without a word. Lisa Grant had checked her medical supplies one more time. Above them, the sound of surging engines grew louder. You made us move in a pattern I had never seen before, Veltar said. Not in a straight line toward your base, but in a zigzag path through the canyon. You seem to know every rock and hiding place. Jake smiled slightly. I have been stationed on that world for 8 months. I spent a lot of time exploring those canyons. I knew which paths the search ships could not see from above. Your knowledge saved all lives, Veltar said. Every time we heard engines approaching, you found us a place to hide. Under rock ledges, in narrow cracks between boulders, behind fallen stones. You moved like you had been born in that desert. Jake could feel the weight of those memories. The constant fear that they would be spotted. The careful timing as they moved from one hiding place to another. The way his heart pounded every time a Catherian ship passed overhead. We were about 2 miles from the base when things went wrong, Jake said. Veltar nodded grimly. The command ship found my crash fighter. They knew exactly where to look for us after that. Jake remembered the moment when their luck ran out. They had been moving through a wide part of the canyon when the radio in his pack crackled to life. But this time, it was not his base calling. It was Catherian voices speaking in their own language. I could understand what they were saying. Veltar said. The search commander was directing his ships to form a circle around the area. They were going to sweep the entire canyon, section by section. There would be no place to hide. You tried to warn us, Jake said. Even though you were hurt and could barely speak, you tried to tell us what they were planning. I said trap. In your language, Veltar remembered. It was one of the few human words I knew. You understood immediately. Jake had understood, but understanding the danger and escaping from it were two different things. The canyon they were in had only 2 exits. The Catherian ships were covering both of them. That was when Danny got hurt, Jake said quietly, Veltar's expression grew sad. He was trying to help us move faster. He saw a Catherian fighter coming down the canyon and tried to get us to cover. But there was loose rock on the canyon wall. Jake could see it happening again in his mind. Danny had been carrying the front of the stretcher when the ship appeared. Without thinking, he had tried to run for cover while still holding Veltar. His foot had slipped on the loose stones, and he had fallen hard against the canyon wall. The sound of falling rocks echoed through the whole canyon, Veltar said. I was sure the search ships would hear it and find us. Danny had been lucky. His fall could have broken his neck. Instead, he had only injured his shoulder and scraped up his face. But now Jake had 2 wounded people to worry about. Lisa had to work on both of you, Jake said. Danny's shoulder was dislocated, and you were getting weaker from blood loss. Your medic was amazing, Veltar said. She fixed your corporal's shoulder in less than 5 minutes. Then she gave me another injection for the pain, all while listening for enemy ships. Jake remembered watching Lisa work. Her hands had been steady even though ships were hunting them just overhead. She had reset Danny's shoulder with one quick movement, then immediately turned back to check Veltar's condition. Danny could not carry the stretcher anymore, Jake sighed. His arm was in a sling. That meant I had to carry most of your weight myself. You never complain, Veltar said. Even when I could see that you were getting tired. Even when the stretcher became too heavy for one person to manage easily. Jake had been tired, but he had also been determined. He had made a promise to get Veltar back safely, and he intended to keep it, even if it killed him. The worst part was crossing the open ground, Jake said. The last half-mile to the base had no cover. We would be completely exposed, Veltar nodded. I remember you studying the area with your binoculars. You were looking for a way to cross without being seen, but there was no way. The search ships were circling like vultures, Jake said. Any movement in the open would be spotted immediately. That was when you came up with your plan, Veltar said. The crazy plan that should never have worked. Jake smiled at the memory. It had been crazy, but it had also been their only chance. I called the base and told them to create a distraction. You asked them to fire artillery shells at empty ground on the other side of the canyon, Veltar said, to make the search ships think we were hiding over there. It worked better than I expected, Jake said. All the Catherian ships rushed to investigate the explosions. They thought we were trying to escape in that direction. Veltar laughed his gravelly laugh. While they were searching empty rocks for us, we were running across open ground in the opposite direction. It was brilliant, but it had also been terrifying. Jake remembered carrying his end of the stretcher while Lisa carried the other end. Danny had stumbled along beside them, his good arm helping to steady the stretcher when he could. Behind them, they could hear the search ships realizing they had been tricked. We almost made it, Jake said. We were less than 100 yards from the base when they spotted us. The command ship came over the ridge like an angry bird, Veltar said. Its weapons were charging up to fire. I thought we were all going to die. Jake remembered that moment of pure terror. The massive Catherian ship had appeared suddenly, its guns pointed directly at them. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. They were caught in the open with a wounded enemy soldier. You did something I will never forget, Veltar said. Instead of dropping the stretcher and running, you threw yourself over me to protect me from the weapon's fire. Jake had not thought about it. When he saw the ship's guns turning toward them, his first instinct had been to shield the wounded. Alien. It had been automatic, like breathing. Danny and Lisa did the same thing, Jake said. They all covered you with their own bodies. 3 human soldiers protecting an enemy warrior from their own kind, Veltar said. I could not understand it. Why would you risk death for someone who was supposed to be your enemy? Jake remembered lying on top of Veltar, waiting for the weapons fired that would kill them all. But instead of shooting, the Catherian ship had hovered above them, its commander apparently confused by what he was seeing. They did not fire, Jake said. I think they were trying to figure out what we were doing. The ship commander was radioing for instructions, Veltar said. He had never encountered humans protecting a Catherian before. He did not know how to respond. That hesitation had saved their lives. Jake's base commander had seen what was happening and sent out every available soldier. Within minutes, human vehicles had surrounded the area. The Catherian search ships had been outnumbered and forced to retreat. We made it to the base medical center, Jake said. Lisa got you into surgery just in time. I remember being carried. Through your base on that stretcher, Veltar said. Human soldiers were staring at me, but none of them tried to hurt me. They seemed curious, not angry. You were under our protection, Jake said. Once we brought you in, you were our responsibility. Veltar was quiet for a long moment. While I was recovering in your medical center, I had a lot of time to think. I thought about everything that had happened, about the choices you and your team had made. What did you think about? Jake asked. I thought about how wrong I had been about humans, Veltar said. Everything my people had taught me was false. You were not cruel or heartless. You were brave and kind and honorable. You had shown me mercy when you could have shown me death. Jake felt uncomfortable with the praise. We just did what we thought was right. That is exactly my point, Veltar said. You did what was right, not what was easy, not what was safe, not what was expected. You chose to be human in the best possible way. Veltar looked directly into Jake's eyes. That day in the desert, you saved more than just my life. You saved my soul. You showed me that there was another way to live, another way to think about enemies and friends. Jake could see the emotion in the alien's face. What happened after you recovered? That, Veltar said, is when my real education began. That is when I learned what it truly means to be human.